We don't hire terrorists here, Omar Khalil shouted, ripping Fatima's resume in half. Casablanca, 2019. Fatima el-Masri, a qualified finance graduate in a modest hijab, stood frozen in the brightly lit office. Omar, the entitled heir to Khalil Textiles, leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. A phone camera, held by someone near the door, recorded the scene. Omar gestured dismissively towards the exit. Security will show you out. Fatima took a step back, her hands clasped in front of her. She did not speak. Two burly security guards stepped forward, flanking her. They motioned for her to move. Omar watched, his expression bored. He picked up another file from his desk. Fatima turned and walked towards the door. The guards followed closely. As she passed through the outer office, employees stopped typing, watching her. Omar's mocking laughter followed her. One young worker, Ahmed, quickly scribbled something on a business card. As Fatima passed him, he subtly extended his hand, the card palmed within it. Fatima's fingers brushed his as she took the card, her movement almost imperceptible. She slid it into her pocket. The heavy glass door of the office building stood before her. One of the guards pushed it open. Fatima walked through behind her. The glass door swung shut with a heavy thud. She looked back for a brief moment. Through the glass, she could see Omar Khalil laughing, leaning back in his chair. His assistant, Layla, stood nearby, watching the scene with a look that Fatima couldn't quite read. Not sympathy, not amusement, something colder, more calculating. Fatima turned away. She adjusted her hijab and walked down the street, the torn resume and Omar's words echoing in her mind. She clutched her small notebook tightly in her hand. It remained intact. Before continuing, if you believe that respect and dignity are fundamental rights for everyone, hit that like button and subscribe right now. Omar Khalil lounged on a plush sofa at a trendy rooftop bar overlooking the city. The city lights twinkled below. He held a glass of amber liquid, swirling it slowly. Honestly, some people, he said, taking a sip. His friends chuckled. Trying to get a job here looking like that. Like I said, gotta filter out the undesirables. He laughed, a loud, booming sound. His phone rang. He glanced at the screen. His smile faded. It was his father. He answered, holding the phone slightly away from his ear. Yes, father. His father's voice crackled through the receiver, sharp and strained. Omar, a bank called again. The debts are mounting. Investors are pulling out. Omar sighed, rolling his eyes for his friends to see. Yes, father, I know. We're handling it. Handling it? The company is bleeding money. The allegations? Just bad press, father. It will blow over. Bad press. The stock is plummeting. There are rumors of a hostile takeover. Layla, who had joined them on the rooftop, leaned in slightly. A hostile takeover risk is significant, Mr. Khalil. We should prepare a defense strategy. Omar waved a hand dismissively. Relax, Layla. Nobody's taking over Khalil Textiles. It's an empire. He ended the call. Old man worries too much, he muttered to his friends. He put a phone down on the table. A news alert flashed across the screen. He picked it up, frowning. The headline read, Khalil Textiles airs discriminatory rant goes viral. 100K views and counting. He stared at the screen, his Rolex ticking loudly on his wrist. He ignored the alert and scrolled through social media, looking for something else. The image of Fatima's face, calm and silent, and she was escorted out, flashed in his mind. For a second, he shook his head and took another drink. Fatima sat across from Samir, a journalist with sharp eyes and a worn notebook. They were in a quiet cafe away from the city center. Samir slid a stack of papers across the table. These are leaked audits from Khalil Textiles, he said. They show massive financial irregularities, furling money, inflated expenses. It's all here. Fatima picked up the papers, her eyes scanning the columns of numbers. It's worse than I thought, she murmured. Samir leaned forward. We can go public with this. Expose him. After that video, people are listening. Fatima put the papers down. She looked at Samir. Not yet, she said. Going public now will just cause chaos. He'll deny it. Tie it up in court. I need leverage. Real leverage. Samir looked confused. Leverage? Leverage? What are you planning? Fatima didn't answer directly. She picked up her tea, her gaze distant. I need to play the long game, she said. She pulled out the business card Ahmed had given her. This is for a labor rights NGO. Samir nodded. They're good people. They helped some of the workers Khalil laid off. Fatima stood up. I need to talk to them. I need to talk to them. See if they know anyone. See if they know anyone. Experienced, she went to the NGO office the next day. A kind woman listened to her story. Khalil Textiles. A lot of pain comes from that place, the woman said. There's a man who knows their business inside and out. Hassan Alami. He was their CFO years ago until Khalil's father pushed him out. He's cynical now, keeps to himself. The woman gave Fatima Hassan's address. Fatima went to a small house on the outskirts of the city. Hassan Alami, a man with a weathered face and tired eyes, opened the door. Fatima explained her situation, the video, the audits. Hassan listened, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Khalil Textiles, he said finally. A gilded cage built on sand. He shook his head. I'm retired. Done with that world. Fatima mentioned Omar's name. Omar Khalil, she said. The son. Hassan's eyes narrowed slightly. He was silent for a long moment. Then he stepped back and opened the door wider. Come in, he said. In Morocco, power isn't taken, he muttered, closing the door behind them. It's reclaimed. Samir sat hunched over his laptop in a cramped office, stacks of papers surrounding him. He traced lines on a complex flowchart, following the money trail from Khalil Textiles to various offshore accounts. He frowned, hitting a key on his keyboard. A message popped up. Access denied. User IP flagged. He sighed. They know I'm digging, he muttered. He received a text message. It was from a burner phone number. Stop asking questions about the shell company. For your own safety. Samir deleted the message, but kept working. Fatima sent him an encrypted file. From Hassan, the message read, more audits. Look for inconsistencies in the export logs. Samir opened the file. He found discrepancies immediately. Large shipments recorded, but with no corresponding revenue. The money was going somewhere else. He cross-referenced the dates with other documents. He found a ledger page, scanned and sent by Hassan. It detailed payments to a numbered account. The page was torn, the top half missing. He zoomed in on the bottom corner. A faint signature. A faint signature. Omar's. He made notes, highlighting the missing information. He needed the rest of that ledger. Layla walked into the outer office of Khalil Textiles, where Samir had left some notes on a table while waiting for a meeting. She paused, her eyes falling on his papers. She glanced around. The office was empty. She quickly scanned his notes, her eyes catching the words offshore accounts and ledger. She picked up the torn ledger page. She looked at it for a moment, her expression unreadable. She placed it back exactly where it was. She did not report what she saw. Layla Banani sat at a small table outside a busy cafe, sipping a glass of iced tea. Fatima walked by on the sidewalk. Layla called out, Fatima El Masri, is that you? Fatima stopped, surprised. She turned and saw Layla. Ms. Banani, Fatima said, her voice polite but reserved. Layla smiled warmly. Please, call me Layla. That video, it took real courage. You've become quite the symbol. She gestured to the empty chair. That's it. Join me. Fatima hesitated for a moment, then sat down. I saw you in the office that day, Fatima said. Layla nodded. A terrible situation. Omar can be difficult. She leaned in slightly. I've been working at Khalil Textiles for years. I know where the bodies are buried, so to speak. Omar has made a lot of enemies, even within the company. His father's mismanagement has left them vulnerable. Fatima listened, her expression neutral. Vulnerable? She repeated. A hostile takeover is imminent, Layla said, her voice low. There are groups circling. They see an opportunity. She paused. I also see an opportunity for both of us. Fatima raised an eyebrow. How so? Layla pulled a sleek business card from her wallet and slid it across the table. I have information. Insider knowledge of Khalil's weak points, his debts, his hidden assets, the people he's alienated. Information that could be valuable to the right person. Someone looking to take control. Fatima picked up the card. It felt smooth and cool in her fingers. And what do you want in return? Fatima asked. Layla smiled again, a calculating glint in her eyes. A future favor, she said. When the dust settles, I want a seat at the table. A significant one. Fatima looked at the business card, then at Layla. She considered for a moment. She sensed an opportunity, but also a warning. She agreed. All right, Layla, Fatima said. We have a deal. As she spoke, she subtly ran her thumb over the business card, feeling a tiny bump on the back. A small, almost invisible device. A bug. She pocketed the card. Layla's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen. The contact name flashed. Mr. Khalil Sr. Layla quickly flipped the phone over face down. Fatima stood before a group of potential investors in a private meeting room. Hassan sat beside her, his presence lending weight to her words. She projected charts and graphs onto a screen. Using the data from the leaked audits, Khalil Textiles is failing, she said. Years of mismanagement, corruption, and disregard for their employees have brought them to the brink. But the core business is sound. The infrastructure is there. It needs ethical leadership. It needs a vision for the future, not the past. She outlined her plan, focusing on transparency, worker welfare, and sustainable practices. This isn't just an acquisition, she said. It's an ethical salvage operation, an opportunity to build something new, something clean from the wreckage. A male investor nodded, looking impressed. A female investor, however, leaned forward, her arms crossed. Why should we trust you?" she asked, her tone skeptical. "You're young, relatively unknown in this industry," and she gestured vaguely towards Fatima's hijab. Fatima met her gaze directly. "Because I understand what it means to be underestimated," Fatima said. "I understand the cost of prejudice. Omar Khalil ripped up my resume and threw me out because of this." She touched her hijab. "He thought I was nothing, but I had the data. I had the plan, and I have the backing of people like Hassan Alami, who built this company before it was corrupted." The female investor was silent for a moment. Then her expression softened slightly. "My daughter," she said quietly. "She was rejected for an internship at Khalil Textiles last year. They told her she wasn't the right fit." Fatima nodded. "This isn't just about business," Fatima said. "It's about proving that integrity and competence matter more than privilege and prejudice." The female investor looked at the charts again, then back at Fatima. A slow smile spread across her face. "I'm in," she said. The other investors followed suit. Fatima's hijab, once a barrier, now seemed to symbolize her moral authority, her separation from the corrupt world of the Khalils. The consortium was formed. The boardroom of Khalil Textiles was tense. Omar Khalil paced the length of the room, his face flushed with anger. Fatima and Hassan sat calmly at a large polished table, flanked by members of their consortium. The auction results were announced. Fatima's consortium had won the bid. "This is a joke," Omar shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "You can't run a company like this. You can't even run a lemonade stand." Fatima looked at him, her expression serene. "Then it's lucky we're selling textiles," she replied, her voice steady. Omar glared at her, his eyes narrowed. "You think this is over? You think you've won?" Layla stepped forward, holding a lanyard with a badge attached. It bore the Khalil Textiles logo and the title Chief Executive Officer. She walked towards Fatima. Omar watched her, his eyes widening in disbelief. Layla stopped in front of Fatima and extended the lanyard. "Congratulations, Ms. El Masri," Layla said, her voice clear and professional. "The company is yours." Omar's face twisted in betrayal. He stared at Layla, then at Fatima. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Fatima took the lanyard from Layla. She held it for a moment, looking at the company logo. Her first order was given without raising her voice. "Effective immediately," Fatima said, looking directly at Omar. "All company assets linked to Omar Khalil are frozen pending a full audit." Omar stumbled back as if struck. He looked around the room, his eyes wild. His empire had fallen. Fatima El Masri, the woman he had humiliated and dismissed, was now his boss. Fatima walked into the lobby of Khalil Textiles headquarters. The air felt heavy. Employees stood in small groups, whispering, watching her. The receptionist, a young woman with wide eyes, fumbled with a stack of papers. Fatima nodded at her and walked towards the elevators. She pressed the button for the executive floor. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped out into a hushed hallway. A security guard stood outside what used to be Omar's office. He looked at her, then quickly averted his gaze. Fatima walked past him. She stopped outside the office door. Omar's nameplate was gone. Her nameplate, simple and black, was in its place. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The office was large and opulent. A panoramic view of Casablanca stretched out beyond the massive windows. Omar's large, ornate desk dominated the room. On it sat his vintage Rolex watch, its gold gleaming under the lights. Fatima walked over to the desk. She picked up the watch. It felt heavy in her hand. She placed it back down, precisely where she found it. Layla stood near the window, watching her. "Good morning, Ms. El Masri," Layla said, her voice smooth. Fatima turned to her. "Layla," she acknowledged. "Where are the Q3 reports?" Layla gestured to a stack of binders on a side table. "Everything is there, though I must warn you, some departments have been warned. Uncooperative." Fatima walked to the side table and picked up a binder. She opened it, scanning the pages. She saw figures that didn't add up. She looked at Layla. "This is incorrect," Fatima said, pointing to a line item. Layla leaned closer. "Yes, some employees are still loyal to the previous management. They've been deliberately misfiling reports." Fatima closed the binder. "Correct them," she said simply. Layla nodded. Immediately, Fatima walked towards the main desk. She sat down in the large leather chair. It felt too big for her. She picked up a pen. The phone on the desk rang. Layla moved to answer it. "I'll get it," Fatima said. She picked up the receiver. "Khalil Textiles, Fatima El Masri speaking." The voice on the other end was hesitant. Ms. El Masri, this is Ahmed from the warehouse. I need to talk to you. It's important. About the inventory." Fatima paused. "Ahmed, the worker who gave her the NGO card, can you meet me?" she asked. "Warehouse B," Ahmed said, his voice low. "Midnight. Please don't tell anyone." Fatima's eyes met Layla's. Layla's expression was unreadable. "I'll be there," Fatima said into the phone. She hung up. She looked at the Rolex on the desk. A silent challenge indeed. A janitor, an older man named Idris, entered the office, pushing a cleaning cart. He nodded respectfully respectfully at Fatima. As he wiped down a nearby table, he subtly slid a folded piece of paper towards her. Fatima picked it up after he left. She unfolded it. It read, "Warehouse B, midnight. Be careful. They watch everything." Hassan Alami walked beside Fatima through the bustling factory floor. The air was thick with the smell of fabric and machine oil. Machines whirred and clattered around them. Workers operated looms and sewing machines. Hassan pointed to a section of the floor. "See those machines?" he said, raising his voice to be heard over the noise. "They haven't been properly maintained in years. Safety violations everywhere." Fatima observed the worn equipment, the frayed wires. A foreman stood nearby, barking orders at the workers. One worker stumbled, nearly falling into a machine. Fatima walked over to the foreman. "You," she said. The foreman turned, surprised. He was a large man with a scowl. "Who are you?" he demanded. "I am Fatima Al-Masri, the new CEO," she said, "and you are fired. Effective immediately. Clear your desk." The foreman's jaw dropped. "Fired? Fired? You can't fire me. I've been here 20 years. Mr. Omar. Mr. Omar. Omar is no longer in charge," Fatima interrupted. "Your negligence is putting workers at risk. Get out." The foreman sputtered and turned and stomped away, muttering under his breath. Workers nearby exchanged glances, some nodding, some looking apprehensive. Hassan watched the exchange, a faint smile on his face. "Bold," he said, as Fatima rejoined him. Omar's father kept men like him around to control the workers. They continued walking. "You know," Hassan said, his voice quieter now, "I used to walk these floors with your father." Fatima stopped. "You knew my father?" Hassan nodded. "We worked together briefly. He was a good man, fought for the workers, got himself into trouble with the wrong people." He paused. "With Omar's father, specifically, I was his CFO, fired for asking questions about certain transactions." Fatima looked at him, a new understanding dawning. "A lion doesn't announce its hunt," Hassan said, looking towards a surveillance camera mounted on the wall, "but it always knows where its prey is." The next morning, the main loom in the textile factory ground to a halt. Workers gathered around it, looking frustrated. "It's broken again," one worker said. "This shipment is due tomorrow." Fatima arrived on the factory floor. "What's happening?" she asked. The foreman, the replacement for the one she fired, explained the malfunction. "It seems like sabotage, Ms. El-Masri," he said, his voice low. "Someone tampered with a mechanism." Fatima looked at the loom. She saw a small metal object lodged deep within the gears. She knelt down, examining it. She picked up a tool from a nearby workbench. "Step back," she said. She worked carefully, her movements precise. She adjusted a lever, then used the tool to dislodge the object. It was a small, bent piece of metal. She pulled it out. The loom whirred back to life. Workers applauded. Fatima stood up, wiping grease from her hands. She looked at the bent metal piece. It looked familiar. A worker approached her, holding out a folded piece of paper. "I found this near the machine, Ms. El-Masri," he said. Fatima took the paper. It was a page from a ledger. The top half was torn off. It matched the torn page Samir had shown her. She looked at the signature at the bottom. Omar's. She folded the page and put it in her pocket. Across the street, parked in a black car, Omar watched through binoculars. He slammed his hand on the steering wheel, his face contorted in fury. He watched Fatima, in her modest clothes and hard hat, fixing the machine he had paid someone to break. Layla sat in Fatima's office. "Firing that foreman was a good move," Layla said, pouring herself a glass of water. "But you need to be careful who you trust. Hassan Alami. He has a reputation. He was involved in the old regime." Fatima looked up from the reports she was reading. "He's helping me understand the company's history," Fatima said. "He's a liability," Layla insisted. "He could be working with Omar. You should let him go." Fatima considered Layla's words. She knew Layla was cunning. She also knew Hassan had been framed. "Perhaps," Fatima said, non-committally, "but right now, I need his expertise." She changed the subject. "I need you to audit Omar's department. Every transaction, every expense report. Go back 5 years." Layla's eyes widened slightly. 5 years? That's extensive. "Yes," Fatima said. "I want to see everything." Layla nodded slowly. "All right, I'll get started." She left the office. A few days later, Layla presented Fatima with an audit report. It detailed several instances of minor fraud within Omar's department. Inflated travel expenses, questionable supplier invoices. "It seems Mr. Omar wasn't very careful," Layla said, a hint of amusement in her voice. Fatima read the report. The fraud was small scale, almost insignificant compared to the larger issues. "This isn't what I was looking for," Fatima said. Layla shrugged. "It's what the audit revealed." Unbeknownst to Layla, the minor fraud she exposed was actually committed by her own team, a calculated move to appear diligent while hiding the bigger picture. Omar's phone rang. It was his father. "Omar." His father's voice was sharp. "The banks are asking questions. The authorities are sniffing around. Fix this mess, or you will lose everything. Your inheritance, your name, everything." Omar's grip on the phone tightened. Samir sat in his small office, surrounded by printouts and notes. He had managed to decipher the torn ledger page. The numbered account belonged to a shell company registered in a tax haven. He traced the transactions. Large sums of money, disguised as consulting fees, flowing out of Khalil Textiles. He had enough to write a damning article. He saved the file and stood up, stretching. He needed to get this information out. He walked out of the office building and onto the street. As he walked down a narrow alley, two men stepped out of the shadows, blocking his path. Looking for something? One of them sneered. Samir backed away. The men advanced. They grabbed him, shoving him against the wall. Stay away from Khalil Textiles, the other man growled. They searched him, taking his phone and his notebook. Just as they were about to leave, a car screeched to a halt at the end of the alley. Fatima's NGO contact jumped out, shouting. The thugs hesitated, then ran off. The NGO contact held Samir up. Are you all right? She asked. Samir nodded, shaken. They took my phone, my notes. He looked at the direction the thugs ran. They weren't working for Omar, he said. They were too overwhelming, organized, like professionals. The NGO contact frowned. Who else would want to stop you? Samir thought about Layla, her calculating eyes, a subtle bug on her card. He remembered the photo on his camera roll, taken quickly outside Khalil Textiles. Layla meeting with Omar's father. Omar Khalil stood before a bank of microphones, his face grim. These allegations against me are baseless, he said. His voice projected across the room. A desperate smear campaign orchestrated by the new management to distract from their own incompetence. He held up a printout. I have here an audio recording proving Miss El Masri herself admitted she doesn't know how to run this company. He pressed a button. A distorted voice, sounding vaguely like Fatima, could be heard saying, I don't know how to run this company. The reporters scribbled notes. Across town, Fatima stood at a different podium, facing a crowd of journalists. Hassan stood beside her. Mr. Khalil has presented a manipulated recording, Fatima said, her voice clear and steady. Here is the full audio. She pressed a button on her phone. The recording played. Omar's voice could be heard clearly, threatening Fatima, demanding she sell the company back to him. Fatima's voice followed, calm and measured, saying, Mr. Khalil, you are correct. I don't know how to run your company. Your corrupt, unethical company. But I know how to build a new one. The reporters gasped. Omar, watching the press conference on a screen in his office, slammed his fist on his desk. Slammed. His vintage Rolex, sitting on the desk, stopped ticking. The second hand froze at the 12. As Fatima finished speaking, the doors behind her opened. Workers from Khalil Textiles, led by Idris the janitor, walked out and stood behind her, a silent show of support. The image of Fatima, a Muslim woman in a hijab, standing before the world with the company's workers behind her, went viral instantly. The battle for public opinion had intensified. Fatima and Hassan sat on his rooftop. The city lights spread out below them. The air was cooler here, away from the noise of the streets. Hassan poured them both small glasses of mint tea. You handled that well today, he said. Fatima took a sip of the tea. It's a different kind of fight, she said. Not just numbers and audits. Public perception. Hassan nodded. Omar thrives on perception. He has no substance. He looked out at the city. Your father, he said, his voice quiet. He would have admired your strength. Fatima looked at him. You knew him well? Hassan smiled faintly. We spent some time together. He was a man of principle. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a faded photograph. He handed it to Fatima. It showed a group of men standing together, holding signs. It was a protest. In the center stood her father, younger, smiling. Beside him was Hassan, also younger. And in the background, partially obscured, was Omar's father, watching them with a grim expression. Fatima stared at the photo. A hidden connection stretching back years. He never spoke of this, she murmured. Some things are best left buried, Hassan said. Until the right time. Fatima looked at the photo again, then at Hassan. A fragile bond had formed between them, forged in shared history and mutual respect. Her phone buzzed. A text message from Layla. Phase 2, ready. Fatima's grip on the photo tightened. Layla sat in a secure room, surrounded by computer screens. She was transferring files from Khalil Textiles' main server to an external hard drive. Confidential financial data, employee records, sensitive client information. Everything. Omar needed to cripple the company from the outside. She smiled to herself. This was her real play. Fatima was too idealistic. Omar, for all his flaws, understood power. As the transfer neared completion, a red light began flashing on one of the screens. An alert Fatima had triggered a silent alarm. Layla froze. She looked up. Fatima stood in the doorway, her expression cold. Behind her stood two security guards. Layla, Fatima said, her voice devoid of emotion. Layla's smile vanished. Fatima, what are you doing here? I know what you're doing, Fatima said. The security footage from your audit. It showed you accessing my files, not just Omar's. And the audit you gave me, it was a distraction. Layla stood up slowly. You can't prove anything. I already have, Fatima said. The system flagged the transfer, and the security cameras in this room are recording. Layla's eyes darted towards the camera. She had been so focused on the screens, she hadn't noticed it. You were just a stepping stone, Fatima. Layla sneered, regaining some composure. You were useful for taking down Omar, but you were never meant to stay in charge. This world belongs to people like me. People who understand how to play the game. Fatima walked further into the room. The game is over, Layla, she said. She gestured to the guards. Escort Miss Sanani out and secure all data in this room. Layla lunged towards the hard drive, but the guards were too fast. They restrained her. As they led her away, Layla shouted, Omar will win. You can't stop him. Fatima watched her go. She felt no triumph, only a deep sense of betrayal. The news spread quickly. Banks, alerted by Fatima's team, froze all of Khalil Textiles' operating accounts. Suppliers refused to deliver materials. Production ground to a halt. The company was on the brink of financial ruin, crippled by Omar's sabotage and Layla's betrayal. Fatima stood on the factory floor, silent machines looming around her. Workers gathered, their faces anxious. What happens now, Ms. El Masri? One worker asked. Will we lose our jobs? Fatima looked at them. She saw fear in their eyes. She thought of her father, of Hassan, of the promise she had made to build something better. She would not give up. We finished the orders, she said, her voice firm. Manually, if we have to. We show them that this company is more than just machines and money. It's us. She pulled out her phone and accessed her personal bank account. She transferred a large sum of money. This will cover your wages for the next month, she told the workers. We will get through this. Idris, the janitor, stepped forward. Ms. El Masri, he said. I wasn't just a janitor before. I was an accountant. I know how the old man hid the money. I can help you find it. Fatima looked at the older man, surprised. You can? Idris nodded. I kept my own ledger, just in case. Omar's father's face flashed in her mind. The threat to sell the assets by dawn. They were running out of time. Fatima sat alone in her apartment, the torn ledger page in her hand. She held a lighter, the flame flickering. She watched the edge of the paper curl and blacken. She felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. Had she become consumed by revenge? Was she any better than Omar, wielding power to punish those who wronged her? She thought of Layla's sneer, Omar's arrogance, her father's face in the old photograph. Her phone rang. It was her mother, Fatima. Her mother's voice was gentle. I saw the news. The company ... Is it true? Are the workers all right? They will be, Fatima said, her voice tired. I used my savings to pay them. Your savings? Her mother sounded concerned. Pride won't feed the workers' children, my daughter. Be careful. Fatima hung up the phone. She looked at the burning ledger page. Justice. It had started as justice. Had it twisted into something else? A knock on the door. Fatima hesitated, then opened it. Hassan stood there, holding a book. The prince. Her copy. You left this at the office, he said, handing it to her. Fatima took the book. I was just... Hassan saw the burnt paper in her hand. Machiavelli also wrote about mercy, he said softly. Fatima looked at the annotations in the book's margins. Hassan's neat handwriting beside Machiavelli's words. They were notes on strategy, yes, but also on leadership, responsibility, the true nature of power. She remembered her father's words, spoken years ago when she was a child stitching torn fabric. Justice without wisdom is tyranny. She looked at Hassan, at the book, at the burnt paper. She had almost lost sight of her purpose. Hassan led Fatima down a narrow, winding street. They stopped outside an old, unassuming building. This is where Omar's father kept his private accounts, Hassan said. He thought no one knew about it. They went inside. It was a dusty, forgotten office. Hassan went to a large, heavy safe hidden behind a bookshelf. He kept everything in here, Hassan said. He worked the combination lock. The tumblers clicked. The heavy door swung open. Inside were stacks of ledgers, bank statements, offshore account details, proof of decades of embezzlement. This is it, Fatima breathed. Everything. As they gathered the documents, the door burst open. Two burly men stood there, the same thugs who had ambushed Samir. Khalil wants the books, one of them said. Hassan stepped in front of Fatima. You won't get them, he said. The thugs advanced. Fatima grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall. She pulled the pin and aimed it at the thugs, squeezing the handle. A cloud of white foam erupted, blinding them. Go, she shouted to Hassan. They scrambled out of the office, leaving the thugs sputtering in the foam. Outside, they ran down the street. Wait, Hassan said, stopping abruptly. He pointed back at the open safe. There's something else in there. Something important. They risked going back. Inside the safe, beneath the ledgers, was a hidden compartment. Hassan opened it. Inside were old photographs. Photos of Hassan and Fatima's father, younger, at the protest, and official-looking documents. Hassan picked them up. His eyes eyes widened. "They framed me," he said, his voice shaking. "And your father? And your father. They had us arrested on false charges. Omar's father orchestrated it." He looked at Fatima, his face grim. The conflict wasn't just about money or power. It was personal. He also found a small, ornate box. Inside was a vintage Rolex. Its serial number matched a payment listed in the ledgers, a bribe to a corrupt official. The broken Rolex on Omar's desk was a twin. Fatima and Samir sat in a car parked outside the central bank. They had spent hours uploading the scanned documents, the audio recordings, the photos, everything that exposed Omar and his father's crimes. "It's done," Samir said, closing his laptop. "The authorities have everything. It's in the system now." Fatima nodded, relief washing over her. On the car radio, a news report was playing. "Warrant issued for the arrest of Mr. Khalil Sr., former CEO of Khalil Textiles, on charges of fraud and embezzlement." Fatima watched the bank entrance. It was happening. Her phone rang. It was Layla. Fatima hesitated, then answered. "What do you want, Layla?" she asked. Layla's voice was shaking. "Fatima, you have to listen to me. Omar, he knows. He's trying to flee the country. He took Hassan." Fatima froze. "What? He knows Hassan helped you?" Layla stammered. "He grabbed him outside his house. He's taking him to the old warehouse by the port, the one that's been shut down for years. He said he's going to make Hassan pay." Fatima's heart pounded. Hassan! She had to get to him. Where exactly? She demanded. Layla gave her the address. Fatima hung up. She looked at Samir. "Omar has Hassan," she said. "Where else? By the port." Samir nodded grimly. "I'll call the police. You go." Fatima started the car. She had to race against time before telling what's going to happen next. With everything on the line, what choice would you make? Answer in the comments. Fatima sped through the city streets, heading towards the port. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. She reached the old warehouse, a derelict building by the docks. She stopped the car and got out, moving cautiously towards the entrance. The large metal door was ajar. She slipped inside. The warehouse was dark and cavernous, filled with shadows and dust. In the center, illuminated by a single hanging bulb, stood Omar Khalil. He held a pistol, pointed at Hassan, who stood with his hands raised. "Look at this, Hassan," Omar sneered. "My father's loyal dog, helping the veiled woman take down my empire." Hassan remained silent. "You think you won, Fatima?" Omar shouted, turning his head towards the entrance. "You've destroyed everything. My name, my legacy." Fatima stepped fully into the light. "You destroyed it yourself, Omar," she said, her voice steady. "With your greed and your arrogance." Omar laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Arrogance? It's my birthright. This company, this city, it all belongs to me." He gestured wildly with the pistol. Fatima looked at the pistol, then at Omar's wrist. He was wearing his vintage Rolex again. "Your birthright," Fatima said. "That watch on your wrist, it's a symbol of everything you think you deserve. But it's just metal and gears. Like your company, like you." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the broken gears from the other Rolex, the one she had found in the vault. She threw them onto the concrete floor, the small metal pieces scattered with a clatter. "Worthless," she said. Omar stared at the gears, then back at Fatima. He raised the pistol higher. "I'll show you worthless!" he screamed. Fatima took a step forward. She grabbed the Rolex on his wrist and twisted hard. Omar cried out in pain and surprise. The pistol wavered. Fatima shoved his hand towards a large, rusted machine nearby. The pistol clattered against the metal, then fell into the machinery. Omar lunged for it, but it was caught in the gears. As he struggled, the sirens outside grew deafening. The warehouse doors burst open. Police officers swarmed in, guns drawn. "Police, prop your weapon!" an officer shouted. Omar froze, his hand still reaching into the machine. He looked at Fatima, his eyes filled with hatred. The police moved in, surrounding him. They pulled him away from the machine, handcuffing him. As they led him out, Omar twisted his head to look at Fatima. "This is your fault!" he screamed. "You did this!" Fatima watched him go. Samir stood in the doorway, his camera raised. He had tipped off the police using the tracker from Fatima's car. The shattered Rolex gears lay on the dusty floor, glinting in the light like worthless coins. Omar's wealth, his power, his gilded cage, all shattered. Fatima stood before a crowded courtroom. Microphones were everywhere. Omar sat at the defense table, his face pale and drawn. His father sat beside him, head bowed. bowed. Fatima held the ledger, the audio recordings, the photos. Mr. Khalil Sr. and his son, Omar Khalil, systematically defrauded this company for decades, she stated, her voice clear and strong. She presented the evidence, detailing the embezzlement, the bribes, the framing of Hassan Alami and her own father. Omar interrupted, shouting, "She's lying. It's a setup. It's a setup. She stole the company." The judge banged his gavel. "Mr. Khalil, you will remain silent." Fatima waited for the noise to subside. "The evidence speaks for itself," she said. Then a surprise witness was called, Omar's father. He walked slowly to the stand. He looked at Omar, then at Fatima. His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried through the silent courtroom. "It's true," he confessed. "We took the money. I built this empire on lies. And my son, there, he followed my example." He looked at Fatima. "I framed your father," he said, "and Hassan, they were good men. I was afraid." The courtroom was stunned. The judge looked at Fatima. Ms. El Masri," he said, "the court has received additional documentation, anonymous submissions, dating back several months. They detail the initial irregularities at Khalil Textiles, prompting the initial investigation." Fatima's face remained neutral. She had planned this from the start, submitting evidence long before she ever stepped foot in the Khalil Textiles office as CEO. Her hijab, once a symbol of dismissal, was now framed by the flashing cameras, a symbol of resilience and justice. Layla sat in a small, sterile room at the police station. Security footage played on a monitor. Layla accessing Fatima's files, transferring data, meeting with Omar's father. An officer sat across from her. "We have you on camera, Ms. Banani," the officer said. "Conspiracy, aiding and abetting fraud." Layla wrung her hands. I can help you," she stammered. "I know about Omar's offshore accounts, the ones he didn't tell his father about." She looked at Fatima, who stood in the doorway, watching. "Fatima," Layla pleaded, "I can give you everything. Just help me." Fatima walked into the room. She stood before Layla. "You betrayed me, Layla," Fatima said. "You put the workers' livelihoods at risk for your own gain." She picked up a pen from the table and placed it in front of Layla. "Write your confession," Fatima said, "or face the full extent of the law, including Interpol. Your choice." Layla stared at the pen, then at Fatima's unwavering gaze. Her attempts to justify her actions died in her throat. She picked up the pen, her hand shaking. Layla's arrest and confession were reported widely. The news of her betrayal further solidified public support for Fatima and the revitalized Khalil Textiles. The company's stock, which had plummeted, began to rebound. Fatima sat in her childhood home. Her mother served mint tea in small glasses. The scent of fresh mint filled the air. Her mother watched her, her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and concern. "You did it, my daughter," her mother said softly. "You brought them down." Fatima smiled faintly. "It wasn't just me." Her younger sister Sarah sat on the floor, looking at a magazine. She picked up one of Fatima's old hijabs. "Can you teach me how to wear this?" Sarah asked, looking at Fatima. "And how to be brave like you?" Fatima's heart swelled. "Of course," she said. Her mother sighed softly. "This fight, it has taken a toll on you, Fatima. You look tired." Fatima knew she was right. The ordeal had been exhausting, but it had also been necessary. She looked at a photo on the mantelpiece, her father smiling. She remembered the photos Hassan had found in the vault. She went to a dusty box in the corner of the room. She found the old protest photos. She showed them to her mother. "Look," she said, "Baba and Hassan. They were cellmates." Her mother gasped. "Hassan? I didn't know." The hidden connection, stretching back decades, was finally revealed. Her father's struggle, his sacrifice, was now linked to her own. She picked up a small piece of torn fabric from her mother's sewing basket. She remembered sitting beside her mother as a child, learning to stitch torn pieces together, making them whole again. It was a simple act, but it foreshadowed the task ahead, mending the broken company, making it whole and strong. Fatima stood before the assembled workers of Khalil Textiles. They filled the factory floor, their faces expectant. Idris, the former janitor, now head of accounting, stood beside her, holding a large ledger. "We have recovered the funds that were stolen from this company," Fatima announced. "Every dirham." A murmur went through the crowd. "These funds," she continued, "rightfully belong to you, the workers who built this company with your sweat and your labor." Idris stepped forward. "This ledger," he said, holding it up, "it tracks every stolen dirham, every pension payment missed. We have calculated what is owed to each of you." Fatima announced a new profit-sharing plan, giving the workers a stake in the company's future. Cheers erupted from the crowd. Workers surged forward, surrounding Fatima, shaking her hand, thanking her. They unveiled a large banner they had made. It was written in beautiful Arabic calligraphy, El Masri Textiles. Fatima looked at the banner, touched. "Thank you," she said, "but we will keep the name Khalil Textiles," she added. The workers looked surprised. "Let it stand," Fatima said, her voice ringing out across the factory floor as a reminder of what happens when greed and prejudice take hold and a promise of what we will never become again. Hassan and Fatima stood on the rooftop of the Khalil Textiles building, watching the sunrise paint the sky over Casablanca. The city was waking up. The air was cool and fresh. They offered me a position, Hassan said. On the board. Fatima nodded. You deserve it. Hassan shook his head. My fight is in the courts now, he said, bringing others to justice. He looked at Fatima. You built something remarkable here. Fatima smiled. We built it. You, me, the workers, Samir, even Idris. Hassan reached into his bag and pulled out his copy of The Prince. He handed it to her. Keep it, he said. You understand it better than I ever did. Fatima took the book, feeling its weight in her hands. The annotations in the margins, the shared history they represented. Their relationship remained undefined, a blend of mentorship, friendship, and something deeper, unspoken. What about Omar? Fatima asked. Hassan's expression hardened slightly. He's been moved to a maximum security prison, facing a long sentence. A text message buzzed on Fatima's phone. She glanced at it. From Samir. Omar escaped custody. Details to follow. Fatima's hand tightened on the book. The sunrise seemed to dim slightly. Fatima walked through the revitalized Khalil Textiles headquarters. The lobby was bright and clean. Employees worked with renewed energy. She walked past Omar's old office, now transformed into a design lab filled with vibrant fabrics and sketches. Workers cheered as she walked by. She stopped at a table where designers were working on a new line of uniforms. These look good, she said, examining a sketch. It incorporated traditional Moroccan stitching, the tarfaya, and was designed to be comfortable and respectful for all employees, including those who wore hijabs. We call it the Unity Line, one designer said, smiling. Fatima nodded her approval. She walked into her office. The view of the city was still breathtaking. In the center of the room, on a low table, sat a large, traditional Moroccan rug. It was the same design that had been in Omar's father's office, but it had been cleaned and repaired. Torn threads had been mended with golden thread, visible but strong. Fatima ran her hand over the repaired section. It bore the scars of the past, but it was whole again. She walked to the window, looking out at the city. She had sought justice, and she had found it. She had sought power, and she had gained it. But true freedom, she realized, wasn't in crushing her enemies or building an empire. It was in integrity, in compassion, in building something that lifted others up. She saw a small cafe across the street. A man sat at an outdoor table, watching the building. It was Omar. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. He saw her at the window. A police car turned the corner, lights flashing, heading towards the cafe. Omar's eyes widened in panic. He stood up, knocking over his chair. Fatima watched as the police officers approached him. The gilded cage had been rebuilt, not around her, but around the man who had built it for himself. Fatima turned away from the window. She had a company to run, a future to build.